So we're going to take this time. Adam and I are going to ham and egg it a little bit. And I really want to invite everybody, because I think Adam actually think you're in for a treat, because Adam's a pretty provocative guy. And as I'm getting to know him a little bit, he certainly does not mince words. And so I think we're actually going to have a good time. We're going to ham and egg it a little bit. But I also want questions from the audience to participate, because let's have some fun here. Obviously, this is about interviews. So anyway, Adam, come on up.
Thank you. Where am I sitting here?
Have a seat. Yeah, please. Wherever you're comfortable. So, well, first of all, Adam, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
I don't even know how to do that. I'm actually nervous. And anyone that knows me knows I don't typically get nervous, but this is impromptu. So please bear with me if I say anything that's not perfect. But my name's Adam Katz. I'm the CRO and GM at Suitability. I've been at the company for about 7 years now, but we've embarked on a really, really cool journey that we're now on in the last year and a half, especially around this concept called brand mentality, which we're going to talk a bunch about today. We were going to have Barstool's CEO because it fit the agenda perfectly, a little too perfect, unfortunately. And I think why I'm most nervous, and then we'll go into the session, is I haven't gelled my hair in about a year and a half, and I don't have jeans that fit me. So I don't wear cardigans for anyone that knows me. So this is a very different experience today. But we were discussing at Suitability the other day, us all wearing our Zoom outfits today, which would have been my shorts and my T-shirt and my disgusting hair. But we changed that up. And thank you, Rob, for letting me actually speak with you now.
Listen, you look great. And don't worry, you look great. But the judges are here, and they're judging best session of the day. And one of the criteria is most real. So I think you got a pretty good shot. I think you got a pretty good shot.
I would win that, yes.
So I think you got a pretty good shot. So what we were gonna do, and so the conversation with Adam as we were planning for this session was this, like I said, this concept of brand mentality, which Adam, and I'll do it a little bit of justice. He'll tell you more about it, but it's this concept when you pull it all together: measurement, social, purpose. You come up with a different way to think about it. Think about targeting and advertising when you pull it all together when you talk to brands. And he's going to talk about that a little bit. But what I was going to talk to Erica about was tying that concept to her audience, right? She has a very specific audience on her site. And I was going to ask her questions about, tell me an experience where you picked an advertiser and they hated you for it. Or tell me an experience when you picked an advertiser and they loved you for it, right? So from an audience perspective, thinking about this in action. But having said that, the conversation to some degree was calling standards into question, right? Because, I don't want to paint a picture of you, but are you, I know you have a point of view when it comes to standards. Maybe they don't go far enough or they're wrong. I don't want to call you the anti-standards guy. That's not right. Or are you the anti-standards guy?
I care about standards, but I think that standards don't go far enough, right? So ultimately, people have their own opinion on everything, right? Even today, looking back at some of the presentations today, I thought from Amex, you were amazing. And I got a chance to listen to Smitha earlier. Just want to make sure I say the name right. And she told a story about degree that actually hit home with me because my mom has a disease called scleroderma where her hands don't work similar to most people. And my mom actually uses the degree deodorant. So it's, live today, I actually watched the moment that has affected my life. So I think ultimately when you think about things through the lens of purpose, culture, emotion, sentiment, people look at them all very, very differently. So I think ultimately that's really what inspired the idea we now have. Now, am I against standards to your standard question? No. I think standards are cool. People make standards so that there's at least a baseline for somebody to look into or run with. But I don't think they do what people really need. So I would say that, other companies need to come out to push the standards to the further level, and they also need to help brands be able to push the limits the way they want. So that would be my answer to that.
How would you argue? I mean, I've been working in this area for a long time, and by the way, I could be cynical too, because I've heard a lot of there's a lot of organizations with 3 letters or 2 letters that do these kinds of things, and sometimes you say, like you got to be in or you're out. And there was a time where I kind of felt like that, it costs too much money to be in. This is wrong. And then I kind of started to think, well, but over the arc of time, you have to be in. So how do you answer that you got to be patient, and it's maybe a little too cynical?
It's a tough question. Give me an example that you went through.
Well, I had clients who said, it costs too much to get accredited, right? Okay. So why should I do that?
That's a very interesting question. Do I think that you should have to pay to get accredited? No. Because I think if you're going to put out accreditations, they should be free. Now, I understand that people need to get paid to actually build these standards. Yeah. So those people obviously deserve the right to get paid. But from my perspective, if you put out a standard, companies should be able to do that for free. So I'm actually very against paying for a standard.
Yeah, it's right. It's tricky. I don't want to set you up. It's not. I think it's not a simple question, right? There's nuance there. But yep. How do you think about? How would you explain to a client the way you think about making decisions and setting the targets, if you will?
So I think what would be good with that is to kind of tell a story of how we got to brand mentality. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of serendipitous that yesterday was Kobe Bryant's 25th anniversary of his first game. So he actually was scoreless in his first game, which was crazy to think about. But brand mentality comes from Mamba mentality, just for everyone to understand in the crowd. So last January when Kobe Bryant died, for some reason it killed me, right? And actually, Aman, who's in the crowd, was watching me mourn in the office the day after. And that's where we came up with the concept of mentality. It was from the Mamba mentality. And ultimately, what we saw with Kobe Bryant throughout his life is that he obviously had a lot of challenges. And by the time he passed away, he was revered, right? And a lot of that had to do with his PR approach, his marketing approach. But he stuck to this mentality approach that really got him back into a much better light. So that's where we actually came up with the idea. And our whole company, we started reading the book about it, understanding the way he went to market, the reason that he did that. I now have a daughter, so #GirlDad is me, just like Kobe Bryant. So ultimately, we really read into that. And what we figured out as a company was that you really need to know who you are. You got to know your opinion. You got to be consistent. And you have to be able to take what you believe and get others to do it, right? So, for example, I'm a big Knicks fan, and I don't know if anyone else is, but Julius Randle now shoots on every single road game at a high school gym because of Kobe Bryant, right? So ultimately, putting things like that into other people's system is the way you push things out into market. So we were starting to think about how we take other people, events, influencers, concepts, opinions, and also scenarios, and marry those things together to actually let brands be successful. So that's kind of how the whole concept came about. And earlier, when IAS and Amex was up here, and it was called Purpose First Mentality, I kind of smirked a little bit to mean that, people are buying into that word, right? So brand safety and suitability are great, and we really do appreciate them at Sightly, but we do think there's a missing component that is layered way on top of that and is really the starting standard of how you go to market before you touch those things.
I did the prep with the Channel Factory session with Jeremy from Nectar, and Jeremy said, I might not want to do this on the stage with you guys because, I've got a campaign going that's like kill the claw or something like that, and it's like I don't want to go out there too much and get a target on my back. And I said, Jeremy, trust me, you've already got a target on your back. Be happy that other people are taking your stuff. So I think, be happy that they're using,
it's awesome.
They're using your word, right?
Yeah, we're inspired by it. It means that we created a category.
Yeah. Yeah, good for
We
you.
arrived.
Good for you. Good for
And
you.
I'm arriving now on the stage.
And by the way, Nick fan. By the way, Nick fan.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Nick fan. There's a bunch of us out here, right? There's a bunch of
A lot of Nick fans.
There you go.
A lot of Nick
There you go.
fans. I like it.
And I am a Kobe fan too. I always tell my kids, because my favorite Kobe line is play. I don't care how good you are. Play like you're the 12th man on a 10-man team, right? That's and Kobe just said that. I don't care. I'm going to do that no matter what. So I'm a fan too. But take that through now to explain to a client why they should or shouldn't buy certain sites or certain advertising or certain targeting.
It's a good question. I mean, Barstool is obviously, we were going to discuss how it is a controversial site in its own right? Like some of the most watched things last year on Barstool were not cool to everyone, right? So I think ultimately what you need to learn is who your audience really is and be consistent. So I think we were going to discuss how Barstool has done a great job of that, right? I mean, you see all these brands that I think it was how to lose a customer in 10 days was the slogan earlier, which I thought, by the way, she was incredible. And, you know, when you watch things like that, you know, she was talking about how today was a special day in the Indian community. So I went right over to Mon and said the same thing to him, right? So I think it's actually really, really inspiring how like people are starting to get better at moving into market in the way things need to change and the way culture needs to change. So I think that that's big. Now, in terms of brands, it's hard because you have to sit down as a group and really have these discussions. So Sightly, what we do is we have a brand mentality profile that creates how you go to market. Our whole team sat down and did it together. It was not an easy time, right? We debated on what should be on that profile, what are influencers we all care about, who are brands that we aspire to be like. And a good example of what we put into our profile to actually create something for Sightly in our advertising, I'll use us as an example, is we were trying to change our brand perception from being just an outcome and a media company that was driving outcomes into a much more data-driven software platform that can impact the industry. And we wanted to change that perception. So one of the ways we thought to do that was through mission-based marketing, right? So at Sightly, we believe that a lot more women belong in leadership than they are today. And one of the great women CEOs in the world is Bumble's CEO, right? We do not compete with her at all, obviously. We're not a dating app. But we put their company, as an aspirational brand in our platform. We're able to then pick up on any time she's in the news and connect it back to advertising. So you're now connecting mission-based marketing. You're connecting also things that you believe in. But we debated out if that should be on there because of those things, right? But then we can also separate in our platform the ability to only target her when she's talking on the news versus when they're talking about the dating site. So I think it's really, really critical for brands to actually be able to do this type of diversified targeting, but I think it's hard. So what we try to do is be prescriptive, right? A lot of the big brands, obviously like Amex, have budgets to test, right? Smaller brands and mid-sized brands, they can't just throw around money and take the risk all the time. But what's interesting to me is a lot of the mid-sized brands actually know their mentality already, right? So it's been interesting to watch that process. So an example of this last year, we were working with Goya's competitor, and obviously the Goya CEO backed Donald Trump, which was a very controversial moment in marketing. And we were working with Goya's competitor, said, let's do something about it. And they went after Goya's customers, and they ended up with 7 times purchase intent, but it went away in 48 hours, right? So kind of like today, speed is become everything.
Everything.
Right? So the goal of our platform is to create the ability to drive that speed. So it's hard for us to make the recommendations to a lot of the brands we talk to other than walking them through our process and helping them kind of think about these concepts with us is the way we do it.
So I want to open it up. You know, that's the other thing I want to do. I want to open it up to the floor here. I haven't a lot of questions yet today, but I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure people got coffeeed up for lunch. They had some soda caffeine.
Coffeed up,
soda caffeine.
I'm stealing that from you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. There's a mic around somewhere. So Alex.
So we talked a lot about big brands and media brands. How, in terms of the big brands where most of the investments happen, what percentage do you guys think?
What percentage do you guys think from the large brands that drive most of the investment are ready for the rapid changes, big decisions around brand safety, around inclusion, right? In my career, I've seen large brands move quite slow. So are we on that cusp of change, or where are we?
That's like a 3-hour question. Let me think where to even start there. I mean, I would say I get your point, but I wouldn't fully see it that way because I do think a lot of big brands have worked with their great agency partners on building these types of frameworks for a while now. So I think there is a framework out there for big brands for a while. So I wouldn't fully think that, but I do think it's harder as a big brand to make these kind of rapid decisions. But what makes a big brand have an easier way to do it is they have the finances to make TikToks quickly, to do all the different creative changes that a lot of smaller brands may not be able to do. So I think from a finance standpoint, it's a lot easier to fund that. So I would say that's part of it. But then on the other side of it, middle-sized and smaller-sized brands can easily come together and come up with these type of concepts, right? So I don't want to not answer your question and give kind of a circle answer, but I think it remains to be seen, right? Like ultimately over the next couple of years, people are going to be testing all these concepts even further. And I think you'll start to see a lot more results coming out of it. But I do think, like, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to that TikTok girl who creates logos. If you guys know what I'm talking about. I know you do because I've seen you shake your head at every idea I've given. So you're on point. I actually want to meet you. I was thinking about it while I'm up here. But in terms of like think about that. Like if I was 20 years ago, I would have looked at those logos and be like, these are horrible, right? But nowadays, this is what sells, right? It's a different world, right? So I grew up in Brooklyn, so I had all the cool clothes back then. We were talking about it the other day, like all the epic and old school brands. Like I wore a 555 soul, all these brands, and they're now all coming back, right? So I should have never thrown anything out. So things are kind of like reversing course a lot of the time. So I do think it's hard to answer the question yet, but it's like ultimately you really just need to know who you are. I think that's the key concept right now. If you can know who you are, what you care about, what you believe in, you can move fast. I don't think it matters what brand.
Save that question because that's going to come up a little later as well. So definitely, but it's a good question, and we should revisit it. Anybody else out there? Lana? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if your thesis is right, how do things look different? 3 years from now, brand mentality is the way forward versus brand safety and suitability as we know it today.
It's another hard question. I don't think brand safety and suitability are going anywhere. I think they're here to stay. But I do think that, like I said earlier, there's a missing component to understand what people really and brands think of those standards, right? So I think, frankly, I believe we become the onboarding ramp as a company to make those things work. That's how I see this working out. And then I also think that other parts of what we do, which is outcomes and all the other things that we drive into, become awesome. I also think, not to give a shameless plug to a friend of mine who's in the crowd, but Vanessa Otero, we work with her at Ad Fontes, and they feed amazing responsible media and misinformation data into our platform. And I think they do it better than anyone. So she's talked to her. But ultimately, it's also about partnerships, right? I think the way we become really, really powerful is through great partnerships, because you can't really do this unless you're working with other data sets that are not your own, because you need data sets that are not the way you think about things. So that's how I would
Got it. Okay, last question, because I think we're up on time.
Let's do it.
Is there one? I know it's flew by, right?
That was easy.
Yeah.
My man right here.
Nate.
So you talk about the mentality, and I was just wondering how you actually manage that mentality or sustain that mentality in the culture of your organization. So what was my man's name here again? Aman. Yeah. So how does Aman how do you facilitate that sort of mentality culturally?
It's an awesome question. So you're asking from our own company. I love that. So last year when everything went down with, obviously George Floyd and a lot of the moments that happened in the world last year, we actually sat down as a group, which I thought was one of the most inspiring days of my career. And we all just talked it out, right? We all just got in a room and had a conversation. And a lot of amazing things came from that. And what ended up happening was we created a program in our company called the United Outcomes that became our cry to help out for all these things in the world. But then what we did was, instead of discussing it through the diversity lens, we discussed it through the morals that we all have. Because I think people in the world can agree on morals. I think that's the key way to fix everything right now. So we sat down and we discussed all these morals that we all agree on. And we keep those morals in everything we do now. So I think ultimately, I'll give you an example of this, right? I'm personally Jewish, and we obviously had the Black Lives Matters, then the Stop Asian Hate was going on, and I was disappointed that no one talked about what was going on to Jewish people in this country. So we stood up for that as our company because we had already stood up for other things, right? So I think ultimately it's about sticking to consistent values and morals that we also do within our company and we also do in our advertising. So if you do it yourself, you could practice it with other people. That's kind of the way we've gone about it. And we have these meetings. Alina actually, who's in the crowd, runs the program inside of our company, and she keeps on it. We have meetings. We help high school students. We're doing a lot of really cool things. So I'm proud of it. So that's kind of how you do it to me. You have to stick to your values within your company.
Got it. Not too bad for ham and egg it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys
Thanks,
for having me.
everybody.
Seriously.
Thank you.